The arena stretched wider than any stadium back on Earth, carved from black stone that shimmered faintly beneath the cold light of alien suns. Towering figures ringed the central platform, their armor etched with scars and trophies from wars spanning centuries. They were the Warlords, feared rulers of entire systems, predators who had never known defeat at the hands of anything they considered lesser. Their eyes glowed with cruel amusement as the lone human stepped into the circle. She was young, shoulders straight, but betraying the tension of standing before giants who viewed her as little more than a novelty. Her frame looked fragile against the monstrous silhouettes that loomed over her. She wore no ornate gear, no shimmering plates of exoskeletal armor, just standard-issue fatigues adapted for alien climates. The laughter began before she even reached the center, a rolling thunder of voices that made the ground seem to vibrate. They mocked her size, the softness of her flesh, the lack of claws, the absence of armored hide. One shouted that Earth must have run out of livestock to send to slaughter, so they had dressed up prey as a warrior. Another bellowed that this tiny mammal would not survive long enough to draw a blade. Every sneer cut like a knife, but she forced her gaze steady, refusing to look away. She knew she was not here to impress them with brute strength. Her world had only recently stepped into the galactic stage, already dismissed as insignificant, too young and too primitive to matter. These warlords, who ruled through terror, delighted in turning Earth's invitation into a spectacle of humiliation. To them, mocking her meant mocking the entire species. Her silence was their entertainment, each heartbeat dragging as they called her weak, fragile, unworthy. The trial announcer, a reptilian officer loyal to the Warlords, read out her name with disdain, stretching each syllable as though tasting something sour. He did not even announce Earth with respect, but as a curiosity, as if it were a backwater planet hardly worth cataloging. She felt the weight of millions of eyes, both present and across broadcast channels, watching for confirmation of humanity's failure. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, the only outward sign of the storm inside. Her training had prepared her for physical exertion, for weapons practice, for tactical maneuvers, but no one had told her how it would feel to stand alone before predators who saw her as a joke. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears, yet beneath the fear was a slow-burning resolve. She remembered the words of those who believed in her, the promise that Earth's place among the stars would be won not by surrender but by persistence. The jeering continued, more vicious now. A hulking warlord with tusks leaned forward and declared she would not last a single trial. Another, with scaled armor that glistened like molten rock, promised to mount her skull on his collection wall as the first Earth relic. Their laughter spread, shaking the walls, carried by contempt. They expected tears, collapse, an open display of fear that would confirm their superiority. Instead, she straightened her posture even more, refusing them that satisfaction. She could not match them in strength, but she understood something they did not, that endurance was not only measured in muscle. Humanity's power was its refusal to yield, even when the odds crushed down like a mountain. Every insult was fuel, every roar of derision hardened her stance. She let the humiliation wash over her, not breaking, not lowering her head. The longer she stood without faltering, the quieter some of the lesser-ranked aliens in the audience became. They had seen species crumble under far less. This one did not crumble. The warlords noticed, their smiles sharpening, irritated that she denied them the easy spectacle of despair. One barked an order, demanding the trial begin at once so they could witness her inevitable collapse in combat. The arena floor shifted, ancient machinery grinding as barriers rose and weapons clattered into place. The shadows deepened, the challenge looming. She inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Her body ached with the weight of their scorn, yet her spirit coiled tight, ready to spring. She knew survival would demand everything: speed, wit, refusal to yield. But at that moment, what mattered was not victory. What mattered was showing them that she would not kneel, would not cower, would not let their laughter dictate the worth of her people. The trial had not yet begun, but already her defiance was a statement. She was the face of Earth in the crucible of alien contempt, and though they roared with laughter, they had no idea how costly that laughter would prove. The order to begin echoed across the arena, and the ground beneath her feet shifted into a battleground designed to break bodies and spirits alike. Towering walls rearranged themselves, jagged obstacles rose from hidden compartments, and heavy doors groaned open to release creatures bred for war. The warlords leaned forward in anticipation, their grins wide and cruel, expecting her to fall in the first heartbeat. The first opponent lumbered into view, a reptilian beast with skin like plated stone and arms thick enough to crush steel. It snarled as it advanced, confident in its size and strength. She moved quickly, refusing to meet it head-on, dodging each swipe with narrow escapes that drew hisses of laughter from the stands. To the warlords, she looked like prey prolonging its death. To her, every second on her feet was proof that she would not break. She used her smaller size to her advantage, darting around obstacles, forcing the monster to waste energy in pursuit. The crowd mocked her for running, calling her coward, but they did not notice the subtle shift. She was surviving far longer than they had predicted. The second wave began without pause. 2 opponents this time, armored bipeds wielding jagged weapons forged from materials stronger than anything Earth had yet mastered. They were larger, faster than the beast, trained for combat rather than brute force. She ducked, twisted, let their attacks strike each other when her movements pulled them off balance. Cuts opened across her arms and side, shallow but burning. Pain spread quickly, but she welcomed it, using the sharp sting to sharpen focus. Each wound was a reminder that she still stood, that she had not given them what they wanted. The warlords shouted louder, their jeers echoing like thunder, but a subtle edge of impatience crept into their voices. She should have been finished by now, yet her refusal to collapse annoyed them. The lesser soldiers watching began to shift uneasily, whispers passing through the crowd that perhaps the humans were not as helpless as the warlords claimed. She heard none of it, locked in the rhythm of survival. Her lungs burned, sweat mixed with blood, and her legs felt heavier with each dodge, yet her determination only grew stronger. The next trial was meant to overwhelm. From the gates surged a predator species, 4-legged and bred with razor spines along its back. It lunged with feral speed, snapping jaws inches from her throat. She rolled under, barely escaping, and scrambled to higher ground. The beast circled, growling, but she kept moving, never offering a still target. When it leapt again, she shifted aside at the last moment, letting its bulk slam into an obstacle. The crowd erupted in noise, some mocking, others startled at her persistence. The creature recovered, but its rage made it reckless, and she exploited that recklessness again and again, each narrow escape infuriating her audience further. Bruised, bloodied, her breath ragged, she pressed forward. Each encounter left her weaker, yet she refused to stop. She had no illusions of victory in the way the warlords defined it. Her triumph lay in survival, in denying them the sight of her broken on the ground. Every stumble was met with a push to rise again. Every blow taken became a symbol of defiance. When the final opponent stepped into the arena, the atmosphere grew charged. A champion chosen by the warlords themselves, towering with muscle and encased in armor gleaming with the blood of countless conquests, advanced with deliberate confidence. He raised his weapons slowly, savoring the moment, certain she would crumble. The crowd roared in anticipation, certain this would end quickly. She tightened her grip on the makeshift blade she had salvaged, its edge dull compared to his weapon but enough to remind her she was not unarmed. The clash was brief but brutal. His strikes hammered down like falling mountains, each blocked or dodged with desperate timing that rattled her bones. Sparks flew when metal met stone, and her body screamed under the strain. One blow clipped her shoulder, sending pain through her chest and nearly knocking her flat. She staggered but refused to yield. Again he swung, and again she found a way to slip aside, leaving only scratches across her skin where death should have struck. The crowd's laughter faltered, replaced by something colder. At last she stood, chest heaving, body marked with blood and bruises, yet still unbroken. The champion growled in frustration, unable to crush her spirit as easily as her frame. The warlords sneered, their amusement slipping into irritation. This human was not meant to last this long, not meant to show resilience that made even their strongest fighters sweat. She had not won. Her body bore too many wounds, her strength nearly spent. But she had done what mattered, she had refused to bow, refused to be erased. As the champion withdrew with a snarl of dissatisfaction, she lifted her head despite the trembling in her legs. The warlords demanded her elimination, calling her survival pathetic, but a seed of unease had already taken root among their ranks. She had endured. That endurance itself was her victory, and though her enemies still roared in derision, the truth had been planted. Humanity would not be dismissed so easily. The warlords dismissed her survival as chance, insisting that dragging out the spectacle only proved how pitiful humans were. Yet beneath the laughter, unease began to ripple through the gathered ranks. The lesser soldiers, those who had seen real battlefields and felt the chill of fear in their marrow, did not share their master's certainty. They had heard whispers long before this trial, stories traded in hushed tones about humans who did not fight by the rules of honor or spectacle. The recruits' defiance reminded them of those tales, legends that spread despite every attempt to bury them. Among mercenary circles, there was talk of missions gone silent, entire platoons wiped out without alarm, no survivors left to speak. The only consistent thread was a single word muttered by survivors pulled half-dead from wreckage: human. Not just soldiers from Earth's armies, but specialists, operatives trained for wars no records acknowledged. They were said to move unseen, striking with precision, leaving chaos where order once ruled. Many dismissed it as exaggeration, ghost stories meant to explain defeats that pride could not accept. Still, enough accounts surfaced to make even hardened warriors uneasy. Her presence in the arena became a symbol, not just of a recruit struggling to survive, but of a species whose true limits no one yet understood. Each time she endured, each time she rose when she should have fallen, those watching were reminded of a dangerous possibility, that humanity had more waiting in the shadows. The warlords jeered louder, desperate to smother the doubt, but whispers always outlive commands. Those who knew Earth best spoke of black operations, missions buried so deep they did not exist on paper, men and women shaped into predators who excelled where no other species dared to tread. These operatives were never paraded before councils or displayed in ceremonial armor. They were weapons forged in silence, released only when extinction loomed or retribution demanded. Rumor painted them as figures who fought without fear, humans who turned darkness into an ally. The recruit herself carried memories that hinted at more than myth. She had grown up hearing fragments spoken in careful tones, warnings given without explanation. Her father's voice often rang in her thoughts, steady and uncompromising: never let arrogance dictate your worth, never allow mockery to weaken resolve. His words were not the usual comfort of a parent, but lessons carved from experience. She never knew the full scope of what he had done, but she recognized the edge in his eyes, the way he moved like a man who had survived battles others never saw. Even now, bloodied and unsteady, she felt his presence in the way she refused to yield. He had always told her that strength was not measured by how hard you struck but by how long you stood when the world demanded you fall. The warlords thought laughter broke spirits, but he had taught her that silence could be sharper than any blade. The rumors surrounding him had traveled farther than she realized. Some in the crowd shifted uneasily as they remembered stories of outposts reduced to silence, of elite squads never returning from missions against human operatives. A name surfaced in their whispers, not one they dared speak too loudly but one that carried weight: the Ghost of Earth, a man who appeared only when the stakes demanded more than conventional warfare. Whether he was real or a mask worn by many operatives did not matter, the fear was real enough. The warlords sneered at these murmurs, dismissing them as cowards' talk, but their eyes betrayed the faintest flicker of irritation. They wanted the humans to remain small, predictable, easily contained. Legends of Black Ops threatened that narrative. If the recruit was not an isolated anomaly but a reflection of something far greater, then their mockery risked drawing the attention of predators far more dangerous than they had accounted for. The girl's endurance became heavier with meaning. She was no longer just a recruit proving stubborn. She was a spark that reminded the galaxy of the shadows humans carried with them. She did not need to declare it. The evidence grew with every second she stood upright. And as the warlords prepared the final humiliation, convinced they would crush her spirit in front of all. The soldiers in the stands asked themselves a different question. If this is what their young can endure, what would happen if one of their true predators arrived? That thought lingered, unspoken yet sharp, turning laughter into a thin shield against dread. The execution order was delivered with relish, the warlords declaring that her survival had been nothing more than an insult to their honor. Weapons were drawn, and guards advanced with the certainty that the spectacle would end in blood. The audience leaned forward, eager to see the final blow that would reduce the defiant human to nothing but a memory. Yet before the strike could fall, the air changed. It was not a sound at first, nor a sight, but a shift that every veteran of war recognized instinctively, the feeling of being watched by something that had already chosen its prey. Silence swept through the ranks. The guards hesitated mid-step, claws tightening around their weapons. One by one, heads turned toward the shadows at the edge of the arena. A figure stepped into view, unarmed, unarmored, and entirely calm. His presence was quiet, but the weight of it pressed down on the gathered multitude with greater force than any war cry. He was human, unmistakably so, yet there was nothing ordinary about the way he moved. Each step was precise, efficient, as though wasted motion had been stripped from him long ago. The warlords sneered, trying to mask their unease with laughter, asking if Earth had come to offer another child for execution. But their voices lacked the same confidence. Their sensors failed to register how he had bypassed security, how the guards posted at every entrance had vanished without sound. No alarms had been triggered, no resistance raised. He was simply there, as if he had always been part of the arena, waiting for the right moment to reveal himself. The guards closest to him lunged, seeking to overwhelm him with brute force. They fell before the first strike landed, their bodies collapsing in silence, throats crushed or joints shattered with movements too fast to follow. He never raised his voice, never wasted effort on spectacle. His actions were surgical, precise, efficient, and terrifying in their simplicity. Each movement was final. Each opponent dispatched as if they were obstacles, not threats. The warlords shifted in their seats, their amusement thinning into unease. They demanded explanations, barked orders, but their elite protectors continued to fall like wheat before the scythe. The figure advanced steadily, his expression unreadable, his eyes fixed on the daughter who stood battered and bleeding in the center. When he finally spoke, his voice carried across the arena with chilling clarity. "You mocked my child. You mocked my world. Now you will learn why your shadows fear us." The words struck deeper than any blade, not shouted but delivered with certainty. The crowd that had roared with laughter minutes before now sat in silence, the sound of falling guards filling the void. Warlords who prided themselves on never knowing fear began to understand that they were no longer observers but potential targets. Their weapons were raised in reflex, but hesitation anchored their movements. For the first time, they sensed a predator greater than themselves. The warlords rallied, sending their champion forward in desperation. A towering brute clad in reinforced armor swung a weapon designed to split tanks in half. The father did not flinch. He sidestepped the strike with an economy of motion that turned the attack into vulnerability. In one fluid sequence, he disarmed the champion, shattered his defenses, and left him broken on the ground before the crowd could even comprehend what had happened. Gasps rippled through the stands. The impossible had become undeniable. He turned his gaze upon the warlords themselves, and they, who had ruled empires through terror, felt the cold press of mortality in their chests. His presence was a declaration that humanity was no longer a species to be mocked or underestimated. He did not need armies or fleets to make the point. His existence alone, his mastery of silence and violence, proved the truth whispered in shadows. When humans arrived, nothing was safe. The daughter, still standing though bloodied, met his eyes. He gave no outward display of pride, no comforting words, only the silent acknowledgement that she had upheld the lesson he had always taught: never surrender, never bow. The warlords, once laughing, now sat frozen, unwilling to test him further. Their power had been shattered not through spectacle but through quiet certainty, the kind of certainty that turned arrogance into fear. The warlords who had once filled the air with jeers now sat silent, their confidence crushed beneath the weight of what they had witnessed. The arena, built to glorify their dominance, had become a stage for their humiliation. Their strongest fighters lay broken, their guards dismantled without ceremony, and their champions sprawled in defeat. The humans had not come with fleets, nor had they come with declarations of power. They had come with one soldier, one father, and that had been enough to unravel centuries of arrogance. The daughter stood beside him, battered and bloodied, yet upright, her endurance now understood in a different light. She was not a curiosity or a token of a fragile species. She was proof that Earth's resolve could withstand cruelty, proof that the spirit of its people was unyielding. Her survival had not been luck, it had been the mark of a species that refused to surrender. The warlords had tried to reduce her to a spectacle of failure, but instead they had unveiled the strength of something they had never taken seriously. The father's voice carried again, calm but sharpened like a blade. He told them that Earth did not measure worth by size, by claws, or by fangs. Humanity measured worth by will, by the refusal to kneel, by the determination to rise again no matter how many times it was struck down. He made it clear that mocking a human was not entertainment but provocation, and provocation would always carry a price. His words were not a threat shouted into the void but a statement of fact, delivered with the weight of someone who had proved it countless times before. The audience shifted uneasily, soldiers glancing at each other with the growing realization that everything they had believed about humanity had been shaped by lies of convenience. The warlords had laughed at Earth to keep it small, to keep its people underestimated. Now the galaxy had seen what one human could do when pushed beyond patience. If one was enough to dismantle an arena filled with killers, what would happen if Earth ever chose to unleash its full measure? The question hung heavier than any proclamation. The daughter raised her head, blood streaked across her face, but her eyes steady. She had not been rescued as a victim, she had endured long enough to earn her place. The presence of her father was not to erase her struggle but to amplify it, to show that behind every human who stood alone, there were others in the shadows ready to answer. She embodied the truth of their species, that even when mocked, belittled, or outnumbered, humanity's fire did not dim. The father did not linger. He offered no dramatic display of conquest, no demands for tribute. He simply warned them once more, never mistake humanity's patience for weakness, never assume silence meant submission. With that, he turned, guiding his daughter toward the exit while the warlords remained frozen, unable to muster a reply. Their power had been diminished not through negotiation but through a demonstration of what fear truly felt like when turned against them. In the aftermath, whispers spread across the galaxy faster than any official broadcast. Stories of the human recruit who would not fall, and the father who appeared from nowhere to break warlords in their own domain, became legend overnight. Species who had dismissed Earth as irrelevant began to reassess, not because of technology or armies, but because of the indomitable spirit that no calculation could account for. Fear mixed with respect, reshaping the way humanity was viewed. For the warlords, the lesson could not be erased. They had sought to humiliate, but in doing so, they had exposed their own vulnerability. They had mocked what they did not understand, and in return, they had been shown the cost of their arrogance. The memory of that arena, of the silence that followed their laughter, would haunt them far longer than any wound. The recruit walked beside her father, shoulders squared despite exhaustion, carrying the knowledge that she had not been defeated, that her endurance had proven worthy of the legacy she carried. The galaxy had seen what she represented, and the warlords could no longer deny it. Humanity was not prey, not fragile, not expendable. It was a species that fought until the end, and when the end seemed certain, it found a way to stand again. The arena doors closed behind them, leaving the warlords in the ruins of their pride. Where once they had laughed, now they were silent. The lesson had been delivered, and it was one they would never forget.